one of my favorite and what I consider to be one of the most fun changes in the D&D 2024 Player's Handbook is with the Battlemaster Fighter. And that change is with the Battlemaster Fighter's maneuvers, many of them can now work with spell attacks as well as weapon attacks. And today I wanted to mix that with one of the best spell attacking builds, the Eldritch Blaster. Combining these two together gives us the Eldritch Blaster Master, or the Eldritch Battle Master, or the Blaster Master, whatever you want to call it. This build is super fun. Let's get into it. Now for this build, we are focused on blasting and we're also focused on control with our maneuvers. These are kind of the two main aspects of this build. So we want a species that's going to focus on one of those two aspects. For me, this is going to be Goliath. Now going Goliath, we have a couple choices. I'm really looking at the Hill Goliath and the Frost Goliath. The Frost Goliath gives us extra damage and slows movement speed. The Hill Goliath allows us to knock targets prone. While the Hill Goliath's knocking of targets prone is not necessarily the best for our ranged Eldritch Blasting, it's great for setting up our allies, and it's also great when we are in melee. The Frost Giant is always going to be good, and it's always going to get use out of it, especially when we're doing a more kiting playstyle. Keep these two things in mind as you pick which one you want to do. I think both are actually really viable. As for the background on this build, I'm actually looking at Musician. Now the reason I'm looking at Musician is it really lines up with our stats. It gives us charisma, strength, and dexterity. Now this build as a fighter can really dip into strength or dexterity, so this one gives us the optionality to choose either or along with charisma. Now for this build, for the sake of it, we're going to assume that our stats are going to be charisma and strength, and then if you want to change it up with dexterity, or if you're just devoted to charisma and strength, you can pick a different background, but I think Musician is good for having that flexibility as a general for this build. The reason either strength or dexterity is important for this build, even as a blaster, is it's going to determine our AC as well as the DC for our maneuvers and the saving throws that are there. As for the Musician feat, this is really good for just a good team buff. It's a team support, and the Heroic Inspiration is really good for us as well, just allowing us to reroll any dice roll. This makes us a lot more consistent in attacking. It also makes us a lot more consistent in saving throws. Just really good once at the end of long rest, and with Warlocks wanting to rest more often, it makes a lot of sense to take this here. Now with first level in this build, we are going to start in Fighter. Fighter, I wanted to start here because it gives us Constitution saves, which is a really big deal, and it also gives us heavy armor, giving us a really good AC. This first level, along with the bigger HP of a fighter than that of a warlock, sets up our defense really well. And to round out these defensive buffs of fighter, we also get Second Wind, which is just extra tanking, extra healing on top of what we already have. We also get a fighting style. I'm looking at dueling or defense. Both of these are really good options at first level. I think either are viable, so it's really up to you which one you want to do. And as for the weapon masteries of this build, which we also get at first level, the three I'm looking at are Sap, Push, and Topple. Sap and Push allow us to be more defensive, allowing for more battlefield control. Topple upgrades our offense when we are in melee. The great thing about Fighter is we can get 3 weapon masteries, so we can pick up all of these with different one-handed melee weapons, giving us all 3 of these properties with the weapons we use. That way when we enter a fight, we can switch between weapons to pick which one is best for this fight, or even turn by turn switch weapons when we're attacking to get the most benefit out of it. For our second and third levels, we are going to continue into Fighter. Second level gives us Action Surge, and third level gives us our Battlemaster subclass. Now for this level, our maneuvers that we get from the Battlemaster subclass are going to be great on our melee attacks, especially along with our Goliath feature that we have. This is going to give us a lot of control. There are 3 really good maneuvers that I'm looking at for this build, all geared towards helping our team and helping us just control the battlefield. The first one I'm looking at is Goading Attack. Goading Attack I see as particularly great when we're hitting our Eldritch Blasts, as it gives an enemy disadvantage if they fail a Wisdom save. This makes it so enemies are incentivized to attack us and not our teammates, but if we're far enough away, they really don't have a great way of doing an attack against us. So they're probably just going to be attacking our allies, but at disadvantage. This makes our team quite a bit tankier. The second one I'm looking at is Menacing Attack. Similar to Goading Attack, it allows us to give a target disadvantage on all their attacks because they're frightened of us. However, this one is great in melee as well as range. It allows us to control and keep enemies away from us and our allies. It allows us to be kind of a wall for our team and keep people back. I think that one is really good as well. And the third one I'm looking at is Disarming Attack. Disarming Attack can be really good. It kind of depends on your DM about how much value you can get out of it. I've seen it be really cool in my games as you take the magic wand away from a powerful spellcaster, so it really is a pretty significant nerf depending on what enemies you're fighting. But overall, these 3 maneuvers along with our Goliath options give us a ton of range of control over the battlefield. Right now just in melee, but soon to be ranged with our Eldritch Blast. And speaking of, when we are getting to 4th level, there's 2 options we can take. First is we can go into Warlock. This gives us Eldritch Blast right away and allows us to really capitalize on our high charisma. The other thing we can do is keep going into Fighter for 1 more level to get an ASI, rounding out whatever we need it to. Personally, I'm going to go into Warlock to get our Eldritch Blast running, knowing that at any time, at any level up, we can go back into Fighter to get an ASI kind of as needed, which I think is really good on this build because at any time where we have a slow level, we can go and pick up that ASI. So with our first level in Warlock being level 4, we pick up a few key things. The first of these is Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast, of course, is really great. This build is particularly good because we can capitalize it with all of our maneuvers that we took, as well as all of our Goliath features, giving our Eldritch Blast a ton of control on top of what is already great damage. The second thing I want to pick up at this level is the True Strike cantrip. Now, True Strike is not the best cantrip in my opinion, but it is pretty good for this build because we delay getting extra attack. We get a little bit more out of our melee attacks, making us just that much better while we're waiting to get extra attack. The third one we want to pick up is obviously Pact of the Blade. Pact of the Blade makes our attacks magical for overcoming resistance, it makes a bonded weapon that we can resummon, and most importantly, it lets us attack with our charisma modifier when we make a weapon attack. This is really important for us because after when we get extra attack, it allows us to make those extra attacks with our charisma, even though we're not using True Strike. Really great to pick up here. But the most important part of Pact of the Blade to me is that it allows us to use our weapon as a spellcasting focus. Now this makes it so we can have a shield and our weapon and still be Eldritch Blasting, still be a full caster even while we have that setup going, making our defense really great and seamlessly integrated with our melee attacks as well as our spellcasting. At level 2, we pick up extra invocations. I'm looking at Agonizing Blast on our Eldritch Blast along with Repelling Blast on our Eldritch Blast, making our Eldritch Blast cantrip just really good. This just ups our damage and ups our control that much more. With the third level in Warlock, we pick up our subclass. And I don't think the subclass is super critical to this build. However, the one I am looking at the most is the Archfey. That is because this build right now is really good defensively and really good offensively. The one place it's lacking is in mobility, and that is what the Archfey specializes in. The Misty Steps that the Archfey subclass gives us not only gives us a bunch of mobility with those spells, but it also gives us the extra effects, either making us more tanky personally by giving us temporary hit points, or making our team more tanky with the Taunting Step. I think both of these are good. I see the Refreshing Step as kind of using a range to get in close and make melee attacks, and I see the taunting as we're in melee and want to get out into range. I think this subclass works really good either way in helping us achieve what we want to do, and it just makes us that much more flexible between switching between melee and range playstyles. And at level 4 in Warlock, we get to pick up a feat or an ASI. There are 2 feats that I'm really looking at to round out our charisma. The first one I'm looking at is Spell Sniper. This one not only gives us extra range on our cantrips, allows us to bypass cover, it most importantly takes away the disadvantage from being in melee, allowing us to really be able to Eldritch Blast in melee or range, which I think is a really cool flavor for this build. The other one I'm looking at is Fey Touched. Fey Touched is always just great, and this one is giving us an extra Misty Step, which compounds with our Archfey abilities. I think either of these is really good. I think I'm personally leaning a bit more towards Spell Sniper. And after this point, the build is pretty straightforward, but really it's a really good chassis that we can build on top of any way that we want. You can go more into Fighter to get regular extra attack and the things Fighter gets you with more feats. You can keep going into Warlock to get higher spell casting to gain more control. Either way you go, this solid chassis of the Battle Master Eldritch Blaster gives us a ton of battlefield control while still outputting a ton of damage, and I think it is a super fun playstyle. We're super tanky, we deal a ton of damage, and we do a good job of moving around the battlefield and being flexible. I really love this build, and I would love to hear what else you would do with this build to make it that much more exciting. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and we will see you on the next one.